alone in my camp with 3 alien seductresses. The emergency landing protocols blared through the cockpit as Marcus Reed fought to stabilize his small research vessel. The gravitational pull of Lemuria, a planet not on his charting schedule, seized his ship like an invisible hand, the crystalline surface below reflecting the light of 3 moons in hypnotic patterns. "Come on, girl," he murmured to his ship, the Aurora. As systems failed one by one, just a little more control. The impact came faster than expected, sending him lurching against his restraints. When the ringing in his ears subsided, Marcus assessed the damage: navigation offline, communications damaged, and life support running on auxiliary power. But he was alive. Emerging from the wreckage, he surveyed the alien landscape. Lemuria was more beautiful than the stellar chart suggested, a world of crystal formations and bioluminescent vegetation that pulsed with inner light. The atmosphere, surprisingly breathable according to his scanners, carried scents of mineral-rich soil and something akin to cinnamon. Marcus established his emergency camp before the triple moonset, unfolding his shelter and activating the perimeter sensors. 6 weeks of emergency rations, he noted in his recorder. Repair estimate: minimum 17 days for basic communications. He was calculating repair priorities when the perimeter alert vibrated silently against his wrist. Someone or something was watching him. "I know you're there," he called out, hand resting on his scanner rather than his pulse rifle. "I'm not a threat, just a traveler who took a wrong turn." The silence stretched until the crystal-adorned foliage parted, revealing 3 figures who were unmistakably female but distinctly not human. Their skin held a subtle translucence, catching the moonlight like polished alabaster with undertones of color that shifted with their movements. The tallest stepped forward, her movements precise and measured. Her skin shimmered with cool blue undertones matching her analytical gaze. "Your vessel disrupted our harmonization ritual," she stated in perfect universal standard, though her mouth movements didn't quite sync with the words. Some kind of translation ability, Marcus guessed. "I'm Thalia," she continued, gesturing to her companions. "This is Ilara and Kaida. We are Lumorians." Ilara offered a gentle smile, her skin glowing with soft green patterns that seemed to pulse with her breathing. Her eyes, wide and curious, studied his equipment with undisguised fascination. Kaida, by contrast, circled the perimeter of his camp with predatory grace, her skin rippling with amber patterns that intensified when she fixed her gaze on him. Unlike her companions, her assessment was clearly more personal than scientific. "Marcus Reed," he replied, lowering his scanner. "Stellar cartographer from Earth Colony Delta. Not exactly where I planned to be tonight." "Your trajectory suggests you encountered the veiled asteroids," Thalia observed. "Few outsiders navigate them successfully." Ilara approached, holding out something that resembled a translucent fruit. "You must be hungry. This will help restore your energy." Kaida laughed, a sound like wind chimes. "Don't be fooled by her kindness, Star Traveler. She's just as curious about your physiology as we all are." She stopped directly before him, close enough that he could see the intricate patterns beneath her skin. "Humans rarely visit our quadrant." Marcus accepted the fruit cautiously. "I didn't know Lemuria was inhabited. Our records show it as unexplored." "We prefer it that way," Thalia replied. "Our existence is not commonly shared with outsiders." As the triple moons reached their apex, casting rainbow shadows through the crystal formations, Marcus realized his unplanned landing might prove more complex than mere repairs. The 3 women established themselves around his camp with casual authority, clearly intending to monitor him through the night. Their presence transformed his isolation into something else entirely, a sensation of being both guest and captive, observer and observed. As the alien night deepened, Marcus wondered if his emergency protocols had prepared him for this particular type of first contact, one where the boundaries between scientific curiosity and personal fascination were already beginning to blur. Dawn broke on Lemuria with a spectacular display of refracted light through the crystal formations, casting prismatic patterns across Marcus's camp. He had spent the night alternating between repair work and cautious conversation with the 3 Lumorians, who had maintained their vigilance until the first sun crested the horizon. Thalia returned as Marcus was diagnosing the communication array, her movements deliberate and efficient. Without a word, she knelt beside him and began recalibrating his instruments with surprising familiarity. "You understand Earth technology?" Marcus asked, watching her slender fingers adjust the quantum harmonizer. "I understand patterns," she replied, her blue-tinged skin glowing more intensely when she concentrated. "Your technology follows logical sequences, not unlike our crystalline networks." She glanced at him, her gaze analytical yet not unkind. "Your calibrations were off by 3 microns. The crystalline atmosphere here distorts standard measurements." Working together, they made more progress in 2 hours than Marcus would have achieved in a day. As they finished, Talia's hand brushed against his, and he felt a subtle electrical current pass between them, something that wasn't entirely physical. "You felt that?" she observed. Not a question, but a confirmation. "What was it?" Marcus asked. "Resonance," she answered simply. "Our species perceives emotional and intellectual patterns as energy. Yours are unusually compatible." Before he could inquire further, Elara arrived carrying a woven container of local flora. She smiled at Marcus's obvious fascination with the bioluminescent plants. "These will help with your injuries," she said, noticing the abrasions on his arms from the crash that he'd dismissed as minor. "I'm fine," he assured her. "My medkit contains synthetic compounds that won't work effectively here," she finished, her green-patterned skin pulsing gently. "Lemuria changes off-world substances. Our remedies will adapt to you." Marcus hesitated, then offered his arm. Elara applied a gelatinous substance from one of the plants, and the relief was immediate. Not just pain relief, but a sensation of renewal that spread up his arm. "That's remarkable," he murmured, watching as the abrasion visibly healed. Elara's fingers lingered on his skin. "Your cellular structure responds well. Your body accepts Lemuria." Her voice carried a note of pleasure at this discovery. The moment was interrupted by Kaida's arrival. She carried what appeared to be hunting implements and wore an expression of amused challenge. "While they tend to your machines and scratches, Star Traveler, I'll ensure you survive long enough to use them," she announced. "Nightfall brings predators attracted to off-world energy signatures. You need to learn our defenses." The training session that followed was both grueling and exhilarating. Kaida was a demanding teacher, using her superior agility to demonstrate how Lemurian defensive techniques utilized an opponent's energy against them. Each time Marcus found himself pinned to the crystal-flecked ground, Kaida's amber patterns flared with something that might have been approval or desire, perhaps both. "Not terrible," she conceded after he finally executed a countermaneuver correctly. For a human. Their faces were inches apart, her body pressed against his in what had begun as a defensive position, but held for several heartbeats longer than necessary. Marcus became acutely aware of the warmth radiating from her skin, the subtle spiced scent that seemed unique to her. "Is this part of the training?" he asked, voice lower than intended. Kaida's lips curved into a smile. "Everything is training on Lemuria, Marcus Reed." She released him and stood in one fluid motion. "Or everything is seduction. Sometimes we don't distinguish." As twilight approached, the 3 Lemurians gathered at the edge of his camp. They conversed briefly in their native language, a melodic exchange that sounded like crystal chimes in the wind, before Thalia addressed him. "We've decided to invite you to our settlement," she stated. "It's unprecedented, but your presence here is already unprecedented." "Why me?" Marcus asked. Elara's gentle voice answered. "Because you listen more than you speak. Because your energy patterns show respect rather than conquest. And," Kaida added with characteristic directness, "because we find you intriguing in ways that merit further exploration." As Marcus gathered essential equipment to bring along, he reflected on how quickly his emergency landing had evolved from disaster to something entirely unexpected. The 3 women waited at the forest's edge, their skin illuminating in the gathering darkness. Blue, green, and amber beacons guiding him into unknown territory, both physical and emotional. The Lemurian settlement was hidden within a vast crystal cavern, invisible from above yet expansive within. Dwellings were grown rather than built, formed from living crystal that responded to touch and thought. Marcus observed how residents shaped their environment through some form of psychic connection to the crystalline structures, a symbiosis beyond Earth's technological achievements. "Tonight is harmonic convergence," Elara explained as they entered the central chamber where dozens of Lemurians prepared for celebration. When our three moons align perfectly, once per solar cycle, they say, celebration began with music unlike anything Marcus had experienced. Tones produced by touching crystal, formations that somehow amplified and expressed the emotions of the player, the chamber filled with harmonies that he not only heard but felt resonating within his body, stirring emotions that weren't entirely his own. Overwhelming? Thalia appeared beside him, offering a translucent goblet containing an iridescent liquid. Beautiful, Marcus corrected, accepting the drink. What is this? Essence of moonlight filtered through living crystal, she replied. It heightens perception temporarily, helps outsiders experience our reality more fully. The beverage tasted like starlight might, if stars had flavor, and warmth spread through him, sharpening his senses. The patterns beneath Thalia's skin became more distinct, pulsing in complex sequences that somehow conveyed meaning beyond words. You're trying to read me, she observed, her typical reserve softening. I'm trying to understand you, Marcus amended. Understanding requires more than observation. Thalia's hand found his, fingers intertwining. It requires connection. She led him through a series of crystalline archways to a small chamber, where the walls refracted their images infinitely. Here, with unexpected vulnerability, Thalia shared her essence, a Lumorian form of communication that bypassed language. Images and emotions flowed between them. Her childhood exploring crystal formations, her position as knowledge keeper, her curiosity about worlds beyond Lumoria, and beneath it all, a growing attachment to him that both frightened and exhilarated her. When they rejoined the celebration, Marcus found himself seeing the Lumorians differently, not as aliens, but as beings of profound emotional depth hidden beneath their crystalline exteriors. Later, as dancers performed beneath the central dome open to the three aligned moons, Ilara found Marcus watching the spectacle. Her green patterns seemed more vibrant, enhanced by the celebration's energy. You see more clearly now, she noted, her voice musical above the ambient tones. Thanks to you and Thalia, he acknowledged. Ilara smiled. We each opened different doors of perception. She took his hand, placing it over her heart where her patterns swirled most intensely. Thalia shares knowledge. I share healing. Feel. A wave of restorative energy passed from her to him, washing away fatigue and lingering pain from the crash. But it conveyed more, her compassionate nature, her connection to Lumoria's living systems, and a tender affection developing between healer and patient. That's... Marcus struggled for words. Connection, Ilara finished, her expression serene yet intimate, different from Thalia's but no less real. The celebration reached its peak as the moons achieved perfect alignment, casting triple shadows that seemed solid enough to touch. In the euphoric atmosphere, Marcus found himself separated from his companions until Kaida appeared suddenly, taking his hand with characteristic boldness. The others have shown you their truths, she said, amber patterns flaring with intensity. Now see mine. She led him away from the central chamber, down crystal corridors that opened to a secluded grotto, where a pool of bioluminescent liquid glowed beneath an opening to the three moons. The reflecting pool, Kaida explained, releasing his hand. It shows what lies beneath our surfaces. Without hesitation, she stepped into the luminous water, which clung to her form like living light. Join me, Star Traveler. Marcus hesitated only briefly before entering the pool. The liquid was warm and seemed to respond to his presence, swirling around him in patterns that matched his heartbeat. Here, there is no separation, Kaida said, moving closer. No barriers between worlds or beings. Unlike the intellectual connection with Thalia or the healing resonance with Ilara, Kaida's approach was direct and primal. When her hands framed his face, the contact unleashed a torrent of raw emotion. Her fierce independence, her role as protector, her desire for experiences beyond tradition, and an unmistakable attraction that demanded acknowledgement. You feel things deeply, Marcus observed as their energies intermingled. I live without reservation, Kaida corrected, her face inches from his, a concept you're still learning. Their lips met in a kiss that transcended physical sensation, the bioluminescent water amplifying their connection, until Marcus couldn't distinguish his desires from hers. When they finally separated, the three moons had shifted past alignment and something fundamental had changed between them. Returning to the settlement, Marcus realized the complexity of his situation. In less than 2 cycles of Lumoria's suns, he had formed connections with Thalia, Ilara, and Kaida that defied his understanding of relationships. Each offered something different: intellectual resonance, compassionate healing, passionate adventure, and each had awakened different aspects of himself. As the celebration concluded and the Lumorians returned to their crystal dwellings, Marcus found himself at a crossroads he hadn't anticipated when his ship crashed on this unknown world. What had begun as an emergency landing had evolved into a journey of discovery that had less to do with stellar cartography and everything to do with the uncharted territories of connection between different worlds. The 4th day on Lumoria dawned with an unexpected sound that jolted Marcus from sleep: the emergency beacon from his ship pulsing with an incoming signal. He rushed from the crystal dwelling where he'd been granted temporary residence, his heart racing with conflicting emotions. A response, he confirmed, adjusting the receiver as Thalia appeared beside him, her blue pattern subdued in the morning light. "Your people have found you," she observed, her tone carefully neutral despite the subtle dimming of her luminescence. The transmission clarified through static. An Earth Alliance rescue vessel had detected his emergency beacon and altered course. Estimated arrival 3 standard days. The message should have elicited pure relief, but Marcus found himself staring at the coordinates with unexpected ambivalence. 3 days, he echoed, looking up to find all 3 Lumorian women had gathered at the perimeter of his equipment. Ilara's green patterns pulsed with visible distress, while Kaida's amber glow had intensified to almost a flame-like appearance. "You will return to your stars," Thalia stated, not a question, but a conclusion reached through her analytical nature. Already Marcus could sense her withdrawing, her patterns becoming more ordered and less expressive, a defensive recalibration. "I have obligations," Marcus began, the words sounding hollow even to himself. "My mission, my team expecting data." "Of course," Thalia replied with artificial precision. "It would be irrational to expect otherwise." She turned away, moving toward the crystal archives where she'd spent countless hours explaining Lumorian knowledge systems to him. "I should organize the information you've collected. Your superiors will want comprehensive data." Her retreat was more painful than any harsh words would have been. Marcus moved to follow, but Ilara placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Let her process," she advised, her healing energy now tempered with sadness. "Thalia experiences most deeply through knowledge. She's protecting herself the only way she knows how." Together, they walked toward the healing gardens where Ilara had taught him about Lumorian botanical medicine. The plants seemed to respond to her distress, their bioluminescence dimming in sympathy. "I knew this moment would come," she said softly, tending to a crystal-flecked vine that curled toward her touch. "But knowing doesn't diminish feeling." "Ilara, You don't need to explain," she interrupted, her smile gentle despite the pain evident in her fluctuating patterns. "Different worlds follow different orbits. That's nature's way." She hesitated, then added, "But perhaps you could preserve something of us. Document our healing methods, our relationship with the crystals. Let Lumoria's wisdom reach beyond our isolation." Her suggestion, finding meaning through preservation and sharing, was so characteristic of her nurturing spirit that Marcus felt a renewed ache of impending loss. "I'll make sure it's all recorded," he promised. "Everything you've taught me." As twilight approached, Marcus searched for Kaida, eventually finding her at the elevated crystal formation where they had watched the triple moon rise together. Unlike the others, she showed no signs of withdrawal. Instead, her energy patterns blazed with intensity as she turned to face him. "So the stars reclaim their traveler," she said, her directness unchanged. Unless, Marcus repeated, feeling the weight of unspoken possibilities. "Stay," Kaida proposed, closing the distance between them with characteristic boldness. "Remain on Lemuria." The suggestion staggered him. "Kaida, I can't just—" Ilara followed, pressing a living crystal to his heart that resonated with healing energy, attuning his biology subtly to Lumoria's unique frequencies. The adjustment would allow him to thrive in both worlds, his body remembering Lumoria's essence even when distant among the stars. Finally, Kaida completed the trinity, touching a passion crystal to his forehead that sealed the connection between them. With incandescent energy, that rippled through the chamber, causing all the crystals to resonate in harmonic convergence. The amber glow of her patterns merged momentarily with his own life energy, marking him as forever part of Lumoria's collective consciousness. As the three moons reached their apex, visible through the crystal dome above, the rescue vessel landed beyond the settlement. Two worlds were about to meet officially for the first time, but Marcus had already bridged the gap between them in the most profound way possible. "Ambassador," Thalia addressed him, her blue patterns now permanently containing traces of his unique energy signature. "Liaison," Ilara added with serene joy, her green luminescence similarly transformed. "Partner," Kata completed, her amber glow fierce with triumph and promise. Marcus stood with them as the chamber filled with prismatic light, no longer a lost traveler but a pioneer of a different kind, one who had discovered that true exploration wasn't about charting stars but connecting hearts, and that love, like light through crystal, only grew more beautiful when refracted through different perspectives. As the rescue team approached the settlement, guided by Lumorian escorts, Marcus prepared to introduce them to a world where connection transcended boundaries, a lesson from Lumoria that would transform not just his life, but potentially the future of human relationships throughout the stars. The aurora convergence reached its peak overhead, nature itself seeming to celebrate the union of different worlds and the infinite possibilities that awaited in their shared journey forward.